G'day there guys, why does this just feel like 2020 part 2? It's your main man Markee and welcome back to another episode of r/AmiTheA. Now if you love today's ear noise, I would love you to sit back to relax, chug a prawn on the barbie, and enjoy today's bloody good content. Thank you. Posted by user Roy Rero. Titled, Am I the a-hole for not telling my wife that I had agreed to be a guardian before we even met? I've always said that I didn't want kids of my own. However, I became very close with my niece and nephew. I babysat them, and they've spent weekends with me. When they were little, my brother and sister-in-law asked me to be their guardian should anything happen to them. I agreed because they are truly the only kids I could see myself raising. Niece is now 11 years old, and nephew is 10 years old. I got married 3 years ago, and my wife felt the same as me about not having kids. She's very good to my niece and nephew, however, I never told her about what I agreed to with my brother and sister-in-law. Last year, my sister-in-law passed quite unexpectedly. It's been very hard on my brother. My wife and I have been helping him out a lot. Last week, my brother sat us down and said he was updating his own will. He got a sizable life insurance policy from sister-in-law's death, and he's put most of it into trusts for the kids. He wanted us to be in charge of the trusts in the event of his passing. We agreed. Then my brother mentioned adding my wife as guardian in the will, as we never did that. My wife was confused, and I told her that before we even met, I had agreed to be the kids' guardian. She got all freaked out and started saying we agreed on no kids. This wasn't no kids, etc. This started upsetting my brother, as he worried his kids wouldn't have anyone to raise them. We are literally the only options. I told my brother that I'd talk to my wife about it. She's pretty pissed that I never told her this before. I told her it shouldn't matter. Would she really let the kids be orphaned if their dad died? I said my brother dying probably isn't going to happen before they're 18. She pointed out we didn't think sister-in-law would either. She basically relented and said she'd become guardian, but I'd be doing all the work with them. I called her selfish for viewing my niece and nephew as a burden. Now we're barely talking. My friend has told me that I'm being an ass and I can't be surprised at my wife's reaction. Upon further reflection, I wonder if he's right. Am I the a-hole? OP has given the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. Upon further reflection, I can see I might be an a-hole for thinking someone who didn't want kids would automatically be okay with raising my niece and nephew. At the very least, I might be the a-hole for not telling her I had agreed to it. I think that yeah, you really do suck for this one. You understand your wife better than any of us reading and listening to your story, so you definitely were aware that she'd have this reaction upon hearing the news. It seems like you gambled on the fact that her having to be surprised by it, and facing the reality of a close family member passing away, would suddenly change her mind and she'd be cool with taking the kids under her wing. While to some that may seem heartless that she would stick to her guns and not raise those kids when you say there is literally no other choice, I disagree. She made it crystal clear what her intentions, boundaries, and deal breakers are for this relationship. You don't get to be offended that she's sticking to those boundaries, nor does it give you the right to react the way you have and attack her for those boundaries. You're the a-hole, OP. It's clear this isn't going to work. Now in the comments, Obake Ryder says, You're the a-hole. You tried to strong-arm her to something she'd never agreed on. Here's the proper way during the dating process. You say, I do not want to have children. She says, great, me neither, we're a match. I have this deal with my bro though. What kind of deal? And then you proceed to explain the deal. Then your future wife could have made an informed decision whether she stays with you. Instead now, the problem snowballed to a much bigger problem. What else is he withholding from me? Exactly. Wife's position, no kids, ever. Husband's position, 2 very specific kids at a random point in time. I mean, no kids. Opie, why would your wife ever assume that you would take these kids in when the agreement your marriage is based on is no kids? You assume that just because you had these values, that your wife would help raise these kids. But you hid these values from your wife and never even allowed her to express that she does not share these values. You failed to consider your wife's feelings on the matter. You changed the terms of your marriage that you entered into deceitfully, and you're calling her selfish? Truth. And why on earth would OP want to put these kids in a situation to be around a person who clearly doesn't want them to the degree she refuses to be involved? None of this is fair to the kids, the wife, or the brother. You're the a-hole. Your wife is right. This should have come up and is a deal breaker. You can decide this for yourself, but you cannot make this decision for her. Your argument is weak at best. I feel so bad for the wife. This news would have felt like a slap in her face. I'm a child-free woman. The rage this would cause me is unexplainable. Honestly, a lie, as omissions are still lies, about a fundamental compatibility issue like that would be divorce-worthy for me. What else has he lied about? What else does he just assume she'll roll over and do his bidding on? And Striking Firefly says, "You're the a-hole. You knew how she felt about kids, and to say it shouldn't have mattered? Really? Of course it matters to some people. I'm not saying you shouldn't have agreed to be guardian, but your wife should have had all the information. So that if she married you, and you guys ended up with these kids, it was a choice she knowingly made. Or maybe she wouldn't have married you if she had known, and that should have been her choice to make. You owe her an apology, both for not telling her, and for how you called her selfish, and tried to play this off like it was no big deal." And someone suggested a few comments ago to just read the replies from OP, so I'm gonna do that. I feel like we don't really need some context for some of these. There really are no other options to take the kids if my brother dies. Our other siblings are not going to step up and take them, we have no parents, sister-in-law's parents are elderly and in a nursing home. I'm the only choice. But you're right in that I never told her because I didn't think it would happen, and if it did, she'd be on board. Basically, after the few first dates as we got serious, she made a comment about not wanting kids. I said I didn't either, though I was pretty close with all of my nieces and nephews, not just the ones from this sibling. She was cool with that, but I can see how I probably should have mentioned the deal. If that's how it'll be, so be it. They deserve someone to love them, and if she's unwilling and selfish, fine. And I just wanted to wrap this post up with the update that OP put in the post. Wow, you guys have been loud and clear. I was an a-hole. To those wishing my marriage would fall apart, congratulations. Wife left this morning. Posted by user ThrowawayWNSND. Titled, "Am I the a-hole for yelling at my daughter for asking a very personal question?" First, I'd like to say that in my defense, I thought my partner put her up to it. Basically, I, 46 male, have been with my partner, 45 female, for about 20 years. After our daughter, 13 female, was born, I realized that I didn't know a lot of things. But the one thing I did know is that marriage wasn't something I wanted with my partner. I just feel like you meet so many interesting people over your life and have the chance to take a myriad of different paths, and to give up that mindset in exchange for a bunch of government so-called safeguards was not worth it. At least from my perspective, I felt like I was committed to the maximum I would want to be committed to my current partner in context of how we feel about each other. My partner, unfortunately, despite initially accepting my beliefs, later started nagging me on or off about it. She's been out of the workforce for 10 years because she lost 2 jobs due to what doctors later discovered was a condition called adenomyosis, in which endometrial tissue grew inside of her uterine walls. She burned a lot of bridges because she was unable to remain conscious at her desk, and her bosses thought she was just lazy. Recently, she started nagging me again because she said she's been trying to get work again with no response to any of her 100 applications, and that apparently terrifies her. Her parents have also begged me to marry her so she won't have to worry about what they believe will be an eventual midlife crisis. Anyway, my daughter goes to an Episcopal middle school. The community there is kind of insular and gossipy, and everyone seems to have an opinion about everybody else. My daughter came up to me on Friday very upset. She asked me point blank why I didn't want to marry her mother, and if I would leave her and her mum for a new family. I could not believe her mum stooped that low on the marriage question, so I blew up, saying she had no right to get involved with adult business and that I had the right to do what I agreed to with her mum. My partner denies setting our daughter up for this. After speaking more with my daughter, she said that some of the girls at school said they overheard their parents saying that I would marry her if I wanted to, but he doesn't want to. Also that he does want to get married, just not to her. I didn't expect my marital status to be a topic of scorn and conversation, but apparently it was. I feel bad for assuming the worst, but am I the a-hole for also believing that my daughter shouldn't be nosy about adult business either way? I feel like my partner's attitudes about this topic is rubbing off on our daughter nonetheless, and wish they'd realize this family situation is great. OP's offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I might be the a-hole for jumping to the worst conclusion, but to be fair to me, my partner has been dropping very conspicuous hints of wanting a ring all the time. I may have slightly been on your side here if you'd given me actual legitimate reasons that keeping the relationship where it's at is the best option for you guys, but it's apparent it's only a good option for you. You want to meet so many interesting people and take a myriad of different paths. That is so incredibly vague that my first conclusion was that you wanted an excuse to flirt with a bunch of different women without being burdened by the presence of a ring or the guilt of its omission. Your other major point is that your wife is suffering a medical condition that's kept her out of work for 10 years. What about that makes you not want to marry her? You've not made that part clear. It's fine for people in this life not to get married and just be in 20+ year relationships without that commitment with government paperwork. Yes, but what's not fine is that your wife has changed her mind and you continue to be an asshole about it to her and not take her feelings into account. You've instead chosen to take your emotions out on your daughter, who just wants to understand what's going on instead of dealing with the issue with a therapist like you should have. In what universe are you not the a-hole, OP? You're the a-hole. Now in the comments, Jackalope78 says, "You're the a-hole. Did you seriously think that your daughter would never even think about why her parents aren't married when she attends a religious school? She's 13, and then instead of going, 'That's a personal question, what makes you bring that up?' you went full meltdown to a young teenager. Gross. On a young teenager who's more likely than not being bullied or questioned or mocked by her probably religious teachers or classmates because her parents aren't married. Her father refuses to talk about the topic other than saying that he wants to keep his options open to leave his wife if he digs someone else, and who is sent to a religious school where such non-family oriented ideals directly contrast with what she's being taught as the norm at school. Hopping in to say, people gave me a boatload of crap at school when my parents were going through a divorce. For reference, I went to a private Catholic school. Also, private religious schools tend to be fairly small. Being shocked that everything is gossiped about is naive on OP's part. It's like small town mentality. I heard my classmates' parents talk about my parents. I got mocked by fellow peers. Not a fun time, you're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. Quote, "She had no right to get involved with adult business, and that I had the right to do what I agreed to do with her mum." End quote. It's her business too. Jesus effing Christ, man. This is your daughter expressing concern for the stability of her home life, and your response is to blow up at her? And frankly, the over-the-top defensiveness about the possibility of leaving in the future kind of speaks volumes. He won't get married because he wants the option to leave. Everybody's gossiping parents at school are on point. How extremely wrong of him to accuse his daughter and partner of being manipulative liars with zero proof. This family situation is great, you say. You seem to be the only one in your family that thinks that. Your daughter was going to ask questions one day about the family dynamic. It's her family, it's her business. She clearly seems to think that you might abandon her one day. I'm sure yelling at her to stay out of your life is the perfect way to alleviate those fears. Why feel the need to yell at her unless you're ashamed of how she might see you from now on? You're the a-hole. Edit, never mind, I'm Canadian. The US has different rules on common law. Aren't you guys in a common law union at this point? More or less legally the same as a marriage with all of its government safeguards. Honestly, having a child is more of a commitment and government safeguard than getting married. Posted by user Throwaway Snens. Titled, Am I the a-hole for asking my stepdaughter to drive her mum to chemo? I felt bad for asking this right now. It's been 3 weeks since my wife has begun chemotherapy for her cancer, and it's been hell. For all of our family. But especially for me because I have to wake up to see clumps of her hair on the pillow, in the shower, on our bathroom counter. Ever since she first got diagnosed and was told she had to do chemo, I have been very supportive. But after that first time, when she screamed at me in the car saying my car stinks and to pull over to buy her some water, even though we'd be home in half an hour, I've been feeling like all she does is find things to criticize me about. My wife continues to be much nicer to her daughter than she is to me, even when she's in one of her moods. Now, every time I think about driving her the 30 minutes to see her oncologists, I am filled with dread. I am filled with hatred and resentment for the situation, and also towards my wife for making me feel useless and thoroughly unappreciated. My mother is also getting older, and the time my wife is scheduled for chemo and the care that needs to be given to her before and after keeps me from seeing her. I sat down with my wife and stepdaughter, who's 16, at dinner yesterday, and told them bluntly that neither of them was stupid and we could all feel the tension in the house, and that they obviously work better with each other. So I asked my stepdaughter if she would be okay with driving her mother to chemo on Friday and the times after. I said I felt I'd be more useful if I wasn't around, and my mother and my son, who is in college, haven't seen me in a while. My wife started crying, and my stepdaughter angrily said she'd drive her if this was such a big deal. Am I the a-hole? OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I guess more tact would have been helpful. I thought if I talked to both of them openly and honestly, we could start setting expectations better so I can stop being on the other end of complaints that I disappoint expectations. I know everyone deals with grief and extreme situations like this one differently and in their own unique ways, but unfortunately, however the hell you're choosing to go about this one is so wrong on so many levels. I can't believe you exist. Instead of supporting your wife, you've chosen to see her struggles as a personal attack and limiting your own personal freedoms and time. Like, do you even care about this woman you've married and promised to keep and protect? You care more about seeing your mother than your dying wife. You blame her chemo appointments for keeping you from visiting your mother. There's absolutely no excuse for that behavior. That's frankly sickening that you would find that an issue. Apparently, so much so that you've palmed off all responsibility you may have to your 16-year-old daughter. I'm at a loss for words and fail to see how anyone here is the a-hole but you. You're the a-hole. Now in the comments, Grim is Tired says, You're the a-hole. You just don't want to take care of your sick wife. Do you not remember your vows? In sickness and in health. Pretty sure it's especially difficult for the sick person. Must be hard for her to find out she married such a colossal a-hole, now of all times. You're the a-hole. God, he had to see her hair on the pillow and stop and get her water once, so you know, it's only fair, right? You're the a-hole. This whole post is me, me, me. This whole situation is especially bad for you because you have to see hair clumps? What about the woman actually losing her hair? And no wonder she's crabby. She's probably pretty scared and chemo is likely making her feel crappy. You in turn need to find respective support groups or therapists, instead of you trying to escape dealing with the situation. His comment about the hair clumps especially pissed me off, like, how the F do you think your wife feels about losing the hair? God, you're the a-hole. And you're the a-hole. Chemo makes people very sick to their stomach, and the least little scent will cause her to vomit. Also, chemo is notorious for dry mouth. Your wife is sick, so either be a man and help her, or divorce her. She doesn't need you in her life. My mum had such a sensitive nose when she was going through chemo, I had to start buying scent-free everything if I planned on visiting her that week. I remember once I walked past someone with a heavy perfume before visiting my mum, and getting sent home because the perfume smell lingered on me, though I never smelled it. Then I remember her being on some medication that wouldn't let her sleep, like at all. My stepdad was asking her where she moved X items for months afterwards. But my stepdad did everything for her without a single complaint. He drove her to chemo or the hospital. He helped her with her bloody noses and cleaned up her vomit. He shaved her head when her hair began to fall out. He went above and beyond for her without even a single thought. I think there was only one time when he asked me to drive her to chemo, and it was due to an important meeting with a client that was coming from China or some crap. Tried paying me for gas and everything, but I was happy to help out. Was only so much I could do since I had a newborn around the same time. G'day there guys, and that's the end of today's episode. I do hope you enjoyed it and were entertained by today's bloody good content. As always, I want to do a quick shout out and a thank you to all my channel members and Patreon subscribers. Your beautiful faces and names will be up on screen right now. Haven't forgot about you guys, sorry I was taking a little break there. So yeah, if you see yourself, give yourself a pat on the back. If you want to be on this screen, there's links down to the description below where you can sign up and help support the channel and all future projects that I'm going to be doing on this one. With all that said, I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to. I'll see you in the next episode, and I do hope you enjoy it. Thank you.